In this lesson, we will be covering opposite action and problem solving. If checking the facts does not reduce unwanted emotions, you have to decide which skill to try next, opposite action or problem solving. There are 3 ways to change unwanted emotions: checking the facts, which you've already learned; problem solving, which is changing your emotions by avoiding, modifying, or solving the event promoting the emotion; and opposite action, which is changing your emotions by acting opposite to your emotional urge to do something. For both opposite action and problem solving, you have to check the facts first. When deciding whether you'll use opposite action or problem solving, start by asking, does this emotion and its intensity fit the facts? If the emotion fits the facts and acting on this emotion is effective, be mindful of the current emotion. Suppressing or avoiding emotions you do not want is rarely useful, and positive emotions are to be enjoyed. An example would be falling in love and enjoying the experience. Act on the emotion, follow your urges. When you are afraid of walking down a dark alley, avoid it. Engage in problem solving. Feeling anxious about money fits the facts when you don't have money to pay your bills. Create a budget and find a way to save so you have the money you need. If the emotion fits the facts and acting on the emotion is not effective, do not act on the emotion. Consider opposite action. You've been on a lot of dates and haven't liked any of the possibilities. Sounds like most people in cities. You meet a person you feel very interested in and are scared to ask that they'd like to see you again. If you don't ask, you won't get what you want. Finding the courage to ask is opposite action to that fear. If the emotion does not fit the facts and acting on the emotion is not effective, do not act on the emotion. Change your thoughts to fit the facts. This is the easiest way to change emotion. When it works, nothing else is needed. At times, even knowing the facts does not change emotions. In these instances, changing your behavior to change your emotions will be more effective. If you fall off your bike and are afraid to get back on your bike. If emotion does not fit the facts and acting on emotions is effective, be mindful of current emotions. Effectiveness depends on your goals. At times when emotion is viewed as effective simply because it makes you feel good to experience the emotion, gracefully accept the consequences of acting on the emotion. Once you decide an emotion that does not fit the facts is effective for your own goals, it is important to remember that you may not like the consequences of acting on the emotion. If you express anger because it feels good, you have to be ready for consequences that may put a strain on a relationship with whoever you express the anger towards. When emotions do not fit the facts of the situation or do not lead to effective behavior, acting opposite to these emotions will change the emotions, if it's done repeatedly and all the way. Opposite action is acting opposite to the emotional urge to do or say something. Opposite action is an effective way to change or reduce unwanted emotions when your emotions do not fit the facts. Most effective treatments for emotional disorders ask clients to reverse their expression and action component of the problem emotion. Some psychotherapists believe that this is why these treatments work. Some of these treatments include behavioral activation. This is doing the opposite of avoidance behaviors, such as isolating, inactivity, and rumination. It is an effective treatment for depression. Exposure-based treatments, which involve doing the opposite of avoiding and escaping feared events, are effective treatment for anxiety disorders, anger and stress, for learning to identify the cues to frustration and or anger, and then leaving the situation to cool down rather than going on the attack. Opposite action works best when knowing the facts about a situation does not work in changing your emotion. An instance could be rationalizing that asking your boss for a raise is not a threat to your well-being or safety, but still not getting yourself to ask. Taking opposite action would be finding the courage to ask. Opposite action works best when the emotion or its intensity or duration is not justified by the situation. When your emotion, strength, or the length of time it lasts is not justified by the situation, opposite action can be effective. Problem solving is needed when the emotion is justified by the situation. Emotions are not justified when they do not fit the facts of the actual situation. If someone tells you that a person says something mean and untrue about you, you feel angry. But then you find the fact is that the person did not say something mean or untrue about you at all. Taking opposite action would be not expressing the anger. Opposite action works best when the emotion or its intensity or duration is not effective for meeting goals in a situation. When your emotion or its strength or the length of time it lasts is not effective to meeting your goals in the situation, opposite action works. Sometimes your emotions may fit the facts very well, but expressing and experiencing those emotions may do you little good and may even cause you harm. In considering opposite action, it is important to think through whether your emotional response is effective. A car crash creates a long backup when you're in a hurry to get somewhere. You get frustrated. Being frustrated does not help you to safely get to your destination any faster. Opposite action works best when you are avoiding what needs to be done. Sometimes the issue is not really whether an emotion fits the facts, but rather whether acting on your urges has the outcome of avoiding doing things that you need to do. If you find that you're avoiding doing something for this reason, opposite action can be effective. You are depressed and want to stay in bed all day. You want to isolate yourself and avoid everyone and everything. Getting up and active and engaging with people rather than avoiding them, however, is necessary to reduce the depression. There are 7 steps to opposite action. First, identify and name the emotion you want to change. Second, check the facts. The second step can be difficult to figure out. Is there any chance you have misinterpreted the situation or missed important facts about the situation? Check the facts to be sure. Does the emotion fit the facts of the situation? Is the emotion reasonable? Is the emotion justified by the facts? If the answer is no, Step 3 is identify and describe your action urges. Pay attention to your impulses, desires, and cravings. Focus on what you feel like doing or saying. Ask yourself, what do I feel like doing? What do I really want to say? Fourth, ask wise mind. Is expressing or acting on this emotion effective in this situation? If I act on my urge, will it make things better or will it make things worse? Will acting on my emotion solve the problem that I'm faced with? Is expressing my emotion a wise thing to do? If the answer is no, step 5 is act opposite to the emotional urges. If you've gotten this far in the process, you've decided that your emotion is not justified by the facts or not effective for your goals. So, you should do opposite action to your urges. Do the opposite of your actual action urges. Emotions are often much more complex than straightforward and may be a blend of several emotions occurring at the same time. The expression and action urges may be unique to the blended emotion. Even when emotions are simple and easy to identify, action urges may be unique to an individual or to the individual's culture or ethnic group. Let opposite action do the work. Do not suppress emotions. You may have been conditioned to do that quite effectively, but opposite action in some ways can be the opposite action of suppressing emotions. If you try to suppress an emotion while doing opposite action, you're not letting the strategy work. If you experience emotions while keeping your eyes, ears, and senses open, you will learn in a fundamental way that the emotion is not justified. Once your brain gets that information encoded, you will find your emotional reactions continuously reducing. Opposite action is a strategy that works over time to reduce your unwanted emotional reactions. If considerable time has passed and opposite action does not seem to be working, the next step is making sure you are doing opposite action all the way. This means opposite posture, facial expression, thinking, what you say, and how you say it. Halfway opposite action does not work. It is important to work on every part of your response to make sure your opposite action is done all the way. An example of halfway opposite action would be opposite words and opposite thinking. Going to a party to try to reduce your social phobia, but spending all your time looking down and standing in the corner. An example of halfway opposite facial expression, opposite voice tone, and opposite posture would be going to the park with your kids to reduce sadness, but doing this with a very sad facial expression and a slumped posture. Opposite actions don't work to change your thinking and your emotional expression if you do not change your emotional actions. The central aspect of this skill is figuring out what your emotion action urge is and figuring out what the opposite action would be, and then doing it again all the way. Continue acting opposite until the emotion diminishes. Keep doing it until you notice your emotions reduce in intensity, even just a little bit. You need to practice repeat opposite action over and over, every chance you have. Sometimes opposite action works immediately. Most of the time, however, you have to practice a lot to get over habitual, unsatisfying, unjustified emotions. You also have to practice a lot to get over an emotion that was justified by a situation for years, but now it is not. You feel ashamed about something you've done, even though it has not marred the relationship with your friends. You may have to talk about it multiple times before you stop feeling ashamed. When fear is not justified, approach what you fear rather than avoiding it. Do what you are afraid to do rather than walking away. When anger is not justified, gently avoid the person you are angry with rather than attacking. Avoid thinking about them rather than ruminating about all the terrible things that person has done. Distract yourself. Do something kind rather than mean. Try to see the other person's point of view rather than blaming them. Practice half smiling and willing hands. We will learn these skills in the 5th module on distress tolerance. When disgust is not justified, there is no danger of contamination or harm. Bring the food or item that you find disgusting very close to you and keep it close while distracting yourself from irrelevant, disgusting thoughts, or embrace the person you find disgusting. Once you find out that your perception is inaccurate, increased exposure to that person increases the possibility for liking them. This is true primarily for people who are similar to you. If it becomes clear after spending more time with a person you thought you disgusted, and this person is not similar to you, the liking may decrease, but you shouldn't start feeling disgusted again. When envy is not justified, the opposite action is to count your blessings and inhibit urges to diminish what others have. When jealousy is not justified, there is no threat to what you have or possess. Opposite action is letting go of controlling others or a situation and to share what you have with other people. When love is not justified, that is, you love an inappropriate or wrong person or thing, opposite action is to avoid and distract from the person or thing that is loved. All of the reminders, including loving thoughts, while constantly reminding yourself of a way love is unjustified. An example would be when the person you love does not love you. When sadness is not justified, particularly when you are also depressed, get active. Do the things that make you feel competent and self-confident rather than being passive. Increase rewarding activities and pleasant events. Approach, don't avoid. Sadness and disappointment are normal emotions and are often justified by the facts. They become problematic when they outlive their usefulness. Behaviors of sadness, like isolation and ruminating about what you lost, can make it very difficult to stop feeling sad. This can lead to a vicious cycle of depression, which often includes isolation and so can keep regenerating the very depressing we are trying to get rid of. When shame is not justified, there is no threat of being rejected by others. The opposite action for shame is to stop hiding your behavior with people who you know won't reject you. When your behavior violates your own morals, but you will not be rejected by others if they know about it, act on the emotion of guilt. If you lost something you borrowed from someone, meet with them. Apologize and offer to replace the lost item. If your behavior does not violate your own moral values, reduce shame by repeating the behavior over and over in a group that will not reject you. Behavior and personal characteristics can be moral and valued by you, and yet shame can still be justified. If others you care about will ostracize you for that behavior or those personal characteristics in the situation, it can be important to fight the social norms of the group and advocate to change its values. When guilt is not justified, that is, your behavior does not violate your own values or moral code, several opposite actions might be called for. The main opposite action is to continue with the behavior and stop apologizing for it. If your behavior violates other people's values but not your own, shame is justified but not guilt. You can either hide the behavior. That might be important if the community is one you want to stay in. And you might be kicked out if they know about your behavior. You can leave and join a different community or try to change the community's values. In the third case, social action to change community's values would also be a form of opposite action to shame. Although values and moral codes are very similar, they can be differentiated. A moral code is a set of beliefs about what behaviors are wrong or immoral, or in some vocabularies, sinful. Values, in contrast, are what is viewed as important and valuable in your life. Although there may be an overlap between behaviors that are important to avoid and behaviors that violate your moral code, they are not identical ideas. Values refer to what you want to do in life. Morals refer to what you want to avoid doing. This is not an absolute truth, but it's useful for learning these concepts. People and cultures may have different views about what behaviors are moral and immoral. Morality can be learned by observation, by consequences while being raised, or by indirect teaching. A personal moral code may have been learned in school or through attending religious activities. Some people can articulate their own moral codes very clearly. Others, who may be just as moral, may have difficulties describing their moral codes. When opposite action is not working, there are 5 ways to troubleshoot. First, ask, is the emotion actually justified by the facts of the situation? If the emotion is justified by the facts, problem solving could be a better way to reduce the emotion. Second, are your actions really opposite to your action urges? Third, was opposite action done all the way? Fourth, review before and after emotion intensity. Was your opposite action so brief that you did not learn anything new? Are you actually processing the information in the situation? Lastly, remember the opposite action can take time. Kids don't get over the fear of ghosts under the bed by looking under the bed one time. Similarly, opposite action does not work if it is only carried out once or a few times. Moving on to problem solving. Problem solving is the first step in changing difficult situations. When an unwanted emotion fits the facts, you need problem solving. The ability to solve problems is a basic skill that everyone needs in order to build a life worth living. It is one of the core skills necessary for improving emotion regulation or solving emotional problems. The specific type of problem solving covered here focuses on solving problem situations that elicit unwanted emotions. When the situation is the problem solving skills described here are called for. When the emotion that you want to change is justified by the situation, changing the situation may be the best way to change your emotion. Problem solving is needed when acting on emotions is likely to be effective. Problem solving is a coping strategy that increases the probability of effective coping with a wide range of problematic situations. Problem solving requires a conscious and focused effort aimed at developing and applying new solutions to the problems you encounter in everyday life. Before starting problem solving, you have to recognize that there is indeed a problem to be solved. There are types of problem situations. First, there could be situations or people that elicit painful or destructive emotions. These call for problem solving. Even if you do not immediately see what could be done to change the situation or to deal differently with a person. Second, situations or people that are habitually avoided because they caused painful emotions call for problem solving, particularly if your avoidance interferes with getting what you want. Third, one-time problem situations call for problem solving. An example might be not having a ride to an appointment or having an acute illness. Fourth, repeated problem situations call for problem solving when the problem situation occurs over and over, such as repeatedly getting misunderstood or misinterpreted, or not learning information necessary to pass your exams. Problem solving can break the cycle. Fifth, repeated failures to inhibit destruction or ineffective behavior call for problem solving. Behaviors include self-harm, substance abuse, angry outbursts, missing work or therapy, or not doing therapy or school assignments. 6, chronic problem situations require problem solving. Ongoing situations that create continual misery in life, such as living with a partner who is abusive or working in a job you absolutely hate, are examples of chronic problem situations. When you're defining problems, let go of judgmentalness. Problems are specific to individuals and situations. A situation that's a problem for you may not be a problem for another person. The very same painful emotion may be caused by a different situation, depending on the person. Problems are also specific to time and circumstance. The same situation may be a problem today, but not tomorrow, depending on changing circumstances with the same person. There are 7 basic steps to problem solving. The first, observe and describe the problem situation. Second, check the facts. Third, identify your goals in solving the problem. Fourth, brainstorm lots of solutions. Fifth, choose a solution that fits the goal and is likely to work. Sixth, put the solution in action. And seventh, evaluate the results of implementing the solution. When you observe and describe the problem situation, you use the mindfulness what skill of describing to give just the facts of the situation. You describe what about the situation is problematic. Include the consequences of the situation that make it a problem for you. An example would be working at a job you hate. That's a big factor in your not having a life you want to live. You hate your job each day more and more. Now, describe the conflicts or other obstacles making it hard for you to solve this problem. If you don't have another job to go to, you can't afford to not have this job. Then, check the facts. Ask, are my facts correct? People often respond to their interpretation of a situation rather than the situation itself. Your interpretation may be correct, and it may also be incorrect. It is important to check the facts. Ask, how distressing is the situation? It is easy to catastrophize the situation and make it into a much bigger problem than it really is. Radical acceptance and other distress tolerance skills are ways to help you reduce emotion. Stop catastrophizing and see the problem situation more clearly. Ask, do the conflicts of other obstacles I've described reflect the fact of the situation? It is also important to check the facts about conflicts and other obstacles. In periods of emotional distress, it's easy to see many more obstacles than there really are. Interpersonal situations that feel like conflicts in one emotional state may feel like minor disagreements in another emotional state. The third step is identifying your goal in solving a problem. Keep it simple and something you can really achieve. Naturally, the ultimate goal is to reduce painful emotions. The major task for this step is to identify what has to happen for you to feel better. An example would be finding a way to work and like your job, or at least not hate it so much. The next step is to come up with as many novel ideas as possible for solving the problem situation. Solutions can be thought of as one or more actions that lead to the goal. An example would be, the first step in managing a drinking problem might be to go to an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting and getting a sponsor as quickly as possible. All ideas are welcome. Don't evaluate while brainstorming. It is imperative that ideas not be judged during the brainstorming process. The aim is to generate as many ideas as possible without censoring any idea that comes to mind. To let thoughts run free and wild, brainstorming requires an atmosphere of psychological safety. It can take time, but it is important to get every idea you can think of down on paper. People almost immediately start to evaluate suggestions, analyze the practicality of each solution, or point out problems rather than continuing to generate new ideas. It could be difficult to leave an idea alone and wait until a later time to evaluate it. But this is a necessary condition to brainstorming. Distress tolerance and impulse control are often necessary to achieve this. Next, choose a solution that fits the goal and is likely to work. Although brainstorming can be fun, it is not the end in itself. The point is to generate an effective solution to problems where no solution was immediately evident. Once many ideas have been generated, identify which one or two are the best to implement. Prioritize suggested solutions. The potential solutions can be prioritized by organizing them in order of likelihood to work and feasibility of implementation. A solution that might work is useless if it is impossible to put into action. Do pros and cons and consult with your wise mind. One or two of the best solutions from the priority list should be chosen. Evaluate with wise mind and a formal pros and cons exercise on each solution. Next, put the solution into action. Problem solving is aimed at putting an effective solution to the problem at hand into action. Reasons why people don't put the solution into action include inertia, which would be saying it's too hard, I'm too tired, I don't have time. Fear generating thoughts, which would be this won't work, I will be a failure, people will get mad at me. Willfulness, which would be I shouldn't have to solve this, they caused it. If I do something to solve this, I will look weak. And impulsiveness would be running headfirst into the problem with an impulsive, ineffective solution rather than the one initially thought through. After you have put the solution into action, evaluate the result of implementing the solution. Are you satisfied with the results of your problem solving? Do you feel better about your situation than before? Were there any negative outcomes for yourself or for others? The best laid plans often go awry. Even when a solution is carried out exactly as planned, it can fail. Unanticipated obstacles can arise or others can respond in unexpected ways. A critical step in problem solving is to examine how well your actions worked in solving the problem. Once you realize that you have to evaluate your problem solving, you may be more open to the idea that effective problem solving can take multiple efforts with different solutions before you find the one solution or set of solutions that actually solve the problem. If a first effort does not solve a problem completely, it will at least improve the situation. Applying other solutions to the problem thereafter may reduce all or most of the factors that made the situation distressing in the first place. It's important to accept that problem solving is a process, and it takes time and it takes patience, and some problems to solve can require a focused, difficult, and time-consuming process. Now that we've had an overview of opposite action and problem solving, it's important to have a clear idea of how these two skills are different in actual practice. There are 4 types of justified solutions for justified emotions. These include acting on the emotion, A major function of emotions is to motivate action. Often, the action urges associated with the emotion are the same as the actions that represent solutions. The actions associated with the basic emotions generally function to solve common types of problems. If you see a tornado coming, Dorothy, the fear will have you run for the hills. If you're in love with someone, loving has you want to spend more and more time with them. Changing the situation. Simply acting on an emotion urge may give you only temporary relief. When permanent relief is needed in the situation, you will need to use your problem-solving skills to come up with a strategy to actually change or solve the situation. You may have mice in your apartment and you see one in the kitchen and run away. This will temporarily reduce fear and panic, but sooner or later you have to take care of the mouse problem. Try to get those traps that, get them in a box and you can take them outside versus the snappy ones. They're just horrible and gross. Avoiding the situation. Sometimes you can't change the situation because other people or situations are more powerful than you are. In these cases, you might have to choose to avoid the situation altogether. If you're getting bullied at school and no amount of complaining to the school or others seem to stop it, you can change schools. Changing thoughts about the situation. Sometimes you can't really change the problem situation, and you can't avoid it either. In these cases, you might try changing how you're thinking about the situation. If your partner breaks up with you, you can remind yourself that it's better to have loved and lost than to have never loved at all.